Hi, boys and girls. This is our weekly library lesson on figurative language. So it is still National Poetry Week, and so I figured I'd stick with that theme for National Poetry Month, stick with that theme for this library lesson this week. So here we go with figurative language in poetry. Alliteration is an example that you might find in poetry. Alliteration is the repetition of initial sounds in neighboring words. So in poetry, when you see something like she sings a solitary song and whistles in the wind, do you see how that S repeats? Sings, solitary, song. It's kind of like the tongue twisters that you might recite in elementary school. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Lots of tongue twisters have alliteration. I like to play a game with my girls sometimes where we only speak sentences that begin with the same letter like that. So we might, take turns going through the alphabet A, B, C, D, trying to think of a sentence that only has words that start with that letter. Lots of tongue twisters have that, and they're very fun to play with alliteration. Personification. Personification is when something that is not human, like an animal, for example, or a pencil or a school bus, is given human-like qualities. This is known as personification. So the example I have for you here is the leaves dance in the wind on the cold October afternoon. Well, can leaves dance like people dance? No. So that would be giving animal-like quality, human-like qualities to something that is not human. Anytime you hear in storybooks where a dog is speaking human words or an animal is speaking, "Hi, how are you?" that's personification. Normally, of course, animals like ducks and dogs, they make animal sounds, not human words. Onomatopoeia is our next one. Onomatopoeia is a strange word, but it's when you name an action by imitating the sound associated with it. This is known as onomatopoeia. You see these words a lot in our graphic novels, the boom, splat, pow. Even animal sounds can be onomatopoeia. The bees buzz angrily when their hive is disturbed. The word buzz there is the onomatopoeia word because bees make that buzz sound, right? Think of some other words that are examples of onomatopoeia. Like I say, we see this a lot in our graphic novels. Next is going to be similes, not smiles, similes. A simile is a comparison that often uses the words like or as. I enjoy trying to pick out similes in stories. The books that I read, I typically underline all the similes and metaphors. I think they're fun to find. An example here, Jamie runs as fast as the wind, comparing the speed of her running to the speed of the wind. Jamie is as beautiful as the moon, comparing her beauty to that of that beautiful full moon there. The highway was like a parking lot, meaning we were stuck in traffic, right? So those are some examples of similes. Next would be our metaphors. Metaphors are comparisons made between things which are essentially not alike. It's similar to a simile, but it doesn't use the words like or as. Some examples here. Nobody invites Edwards to parties because he is a wet blanket. Comparing Edwards' personality to that of a wet blanket. The moon was a bowl of milk in the sky. That comes from the book Kitten's First Full Moon. He thinks that moon up in the sky looks like a bowl of milk. Comparing the moon, the full moon, to a bowl of milk. Look for metaphors in books that you read. They're fun to find. Hyperboles are next. Yes, that's a strange-looking word. It's pronounced hyperbole. Exaggerating is an hyperbole, an exaggeration, often in a humorous way, to make a particular point. That's a hyperbole. My eyes widen at the sight of the mile-high ice cream cones we were having for dessert. Now, that ice cream cone can't literally be a mile high, right? It's probably like 3 scoops high, but when you exaggerate something, you say it's a mile high. We can say that this break that we've had has lasted forever. Hasn't lasted forever. We've been home for about, 30 or so days, but not forever. Seems like forever. That's a hyperbole. Idioms. Idioms are tricky. Idioms are expressions used by a particular group of people with a meaning that's only known through that use. So some examples. When he asked for help, she said, "Go fly a kite." She didn't want him to just go outside literally and go fly a kite. She just wants him to get away, right? I've got a frog in my throat. Doesn't mean literally there's a frog in there. It just means you're hoarse or you have a sore throat. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, you can, but that refers to how trying to teach someone who's old how to do maybe something new with technology, like TikTok or something like that, right? You can teach an old dog new tricks. There's lots of idiomatic expressions your parents may have said, that you're the apple of their eye, or that your two brothers may be like two peas in a pod. Things like that. Oxymorons are next. These are kind of fun. An oxymoron is also a figure of speech in which two opposite ideas are joined together to create an effect. Well, here we go. So they're contrasting words or phrases, and they're glued together. They may be spaced out in a sentence, and one that I've commonly heard a lot is, in order to lead, you must walk behind, or in order to lead, you must follow. An open secret, a tragic comedy, love-hate relationships, foolish wisdom. These are pretty tricky to find. They're found in poetry sometimes to cause an effect, to create that figurative language there. So poetry scavenger hunts, we usually typically do this one if we were in class. If we were at the library, we travel to each library station and find those examples and some poetry samples that I've collected. But try to do it yourself, a poetry scavenger hunt at home. Look for these types of figurative language in poetry that you have read. That alliteration, remember, is a repetition of a neighboring word with the same initial sound. Sally sings for her supper. Personification is when, remember, an animal or something that is not human is given those human-like qualities. Onomatopoeia words, remember, boom, splat, pow. Look for those in your reading. Similes and metaphors, they're very similar. They're comparing two things, but remember, similes use like or as, metaphors do not. Hyperboles are those exaggerations. Look for times when there's an exaggeration either in speech or in writing. Idioms, I bet you could find some of those. And then those oxymorons, those are the trickiest ones. Those are the hardest ones, I think, to find. Good luck with your poetry scavenger hunt. I've enjoyed recording this lesson for you, and I will see you again next week. Bye.